Hey guys, welcome back to the Music Hole. My name is Cole. Now today we're going to talk about a really kick-ass female-fronted indie rock band, which is of course Sleater-Kinney, Carrie Brownstein's band. If you've seen Portlandia, she's a comedian on that show. This is her band, and this is probably their best album, which is called The Woods from 2005. It's one of my favorites for sure. So I'm excited to talk about it with you guys. So let's dive in to track one, which is called The Fox.
On the day the duck was born, the fox was watching all along. He said, "Land ho!" when the duck died. Land ho! And the duck saw him too.
Yeah, oh my goodness, this is such an intense song, but I love it. I love her singing on it especially. And it's kind of a funny song, in my opinion, because you've got this fox who's kind of world weary. They've been around for quite a while. They're looking at this newly hatched duck, right? And land ho to me is his way of saying like, oh, it's finally dinner time. But he pauses for a moment. He looks at this duck, and the duck looks like he's staring at the fox, you know, in such a way that it's just totally oblivious to the ways of the world. And what I mean by that is the duck is looking at the fox like, ooh, that looks kind of interesting. I wonder if he'll be my friend. You know, he's not grown up enough to realize that the fox is a danger to its existence. So like the song to me is a metaphor for what it's like to grow up and to mature and to become wise and to, you know, look at the world from a new perspective. Because when you get older, you start to realize a lot of things that you didn't realize when you were younger, you know, and especially in terms of like social interactions where you kind of pick up on people's bullshit. You kind of realize that not everybody is a good person. There are definitely bad people out there in the world, right? This fox being bad news for the duckling, for instance. So it's just kind of like, you know, it's just about the reality of life that like sometimes you need just experience in order to understand the ways of the world. Sometimes you need to actually experience something. Telling you is not good enough. You need to like experience it firsthand and realize, as I mentioned, that for example, you know, not everybody is a good person. So that's kind of what this song means to me, is it's about the older being who knows the ways of the world versus somebody who's young, who's kind of doing things that are really silly to all the older people because, you know, if they knew better, they wouldn't look at the fox like a potential friend. But anyways, so that's how I think of this song. But let's move on to track two, which is called Wilderness.
Transmission shot, no backup plan. Will they hit you right? Oh yeah, into a fight. Move to the west coast, pack their things. The winter's on.
So this is kind of a cool metaphor for relationships, and how in certain relationships, there's just a problem when it comes to igniting that fire, as she puts it. Because she says, when we felt the heat, we couldn't turn it into fire. So what that means to me is they clearly like each other. They've got a crush on each other. They're attracted to each other. But because of their own desires, individual desires, as she puts it, they're kind of just like slowly falling apart. So what I mean by that is, they're being kind of selfish. They're not really thinking about themselves as a couple, And the most cliche version of that is probably when somebody is focusing entirely on their career and ignoring their loved one, essentially, because they're like always away on business or whatever. And, there's definitely potential there for a really amazing relationship. And it's definitely probably the case that they might be soulmates. But just because of how they're choosing to pursue their desires, it's ruining a good thing, you could argue. So sometimes in order to keep the fire burning, so to speak, you've got to sacrifice certain things that you might not like. So for example, one of the things people do is they have kids, right? And having a kid is definitely not a selfish endeavor. It's definitely a selfless endeavor, because now you've got to change your entire life in order to help raise and take care of this child, right? But most people, myself included, are kind of scared of having kids, because obviously when you have a kid, your entire world has changed. Your entire world is no longer about you, it's about them. So that's kind of one example that comes to mind, is they clearly like each other, but they're not committing themselves to the relationship, which is not a bad thing per se. It's not a good thing either. It's just kind of how it is sometimes. So it's just the reality of life. That's just how things go sometimes. But anyways, so let's move on to track number 3, which is called What's Mine Is Yours. So this is a bit of a dense song, but I'm going to focus on one line in particular, which really stood out to me when she says, "You can bleed it as long as they don't see it. I'm not going to be ignored." So what that makes me think of is there's so many relationships in the world where people are really suffering. Maybe they're in an abusive relationship, or maybe they're just sad, or maybe their mom died, or maybe they had this unexpected medical bill that they had to pay for. Now all their money's gone. Whatever it is, they're bleeding, but they're covered with these Band-Aids, metaphorically speaking, which means that basically people don't realize that the person they're talking to is going through a really tough time. And as I've said several times on this channel, people don't like to bring their problems up, especially to some random person. It's one thing to like talk to your friends about it, but but here's the problem with life, right? If you're not a very social person, you don't have a lot of friends, you don't have a lot of opportunities to vent. And a lot of people need to vent, myself included. You need somebody, you know, at the minimum a friend who you can just talk to about your problems, because everybody's bleeding in one way or another, and everybody needs to vent a little bit and to have a conversation about their life and maybe get some advice. Not everybody can afford a therapist, guys. So, you know, that's kind of what the song makes me think of, is everybody is bleeding, even if they're not showing it. And you've got to appreciate the fact that maybe somebody's acting a certain way because of reasons that they don't want to talk to you about. And if they don't want to talk to you about it, you know, it's not because you're this or that. It's just because they don't want to bother you. So anyways, that's what the song makes me think of. But let's move right along. Let's talk about track 4 next, which is called Jumpers.
I spend the afternoon in cars. I sit in traffic jams for hours. Don't push me, I am not okay. The sky is blue most every day. The lemons grow like tumors. They are tiny suns infused with sound.
My goodness, this song is going deep, I would imagine, because I pictured this lady who is on the 9-to-5 grind, and she's stuck in traffic at like 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and she's looking out at, you know, the lovely day outside, and she's just hating her life, basically. She's like, what's the point of having this amazing earth? Maybe she lives in Los Angeles where it's really nice and sunny all the time. What's the point of living somewhere like that? And if you can't actually enjoy the weather, right? Because she says, the coldest winter that I ever saw was the summer that I spent. So I interpret that as literally like, okay, the summertime is great, the weather's great, the sun's great, you know, people are having a good time, except for her, the main character, who's working all the time, doing whatever it is to survive and put food on the table and provide for her family. So like, she's trying to imagine a scenario, a possible scenario where people can enjoy the beauty of the earth and yet also contribute to society. Because obviously you need people doing jobs in order for anything to get done. But there's got to be a way where people can enjoy the summertime, but then also, you know, contribute to the world by, you know, being a janitor or a teacher or an engineer or a doctor or whatever you're doing with your life, by being an artist, whatever you're doing. So that's what the song means to me. Is it's about somebody, you know, on the 9-to-5 grind, hating their life, looking out at the world, at this beautiful place they live, and just hating the fact that they can't enjoy it whenever they want to. Everything is so circumstantial. But anyway, so that's Jumpers. I hope Jumpers is not an allusion to someone committing suicide, by the way. It probably is. But anyway, let's move on to, which track was it? Sorry, guys. Track number 6, which is called Entertain.
So you want to be an entertained? Please look away, don't look away with our hair, 'cause we want to entertain. Go away, don't go away. Reality is the new fiction. They say true is true these days. Truth is man-made. If you're here 'cause you want to be entertained, go away, please
Okay, so on one hand, I understand where she's going with the song, but on the other hand, I mean, whatever, man. So let's start with the beginning. So it sounds like she's really annoyed by the fact that people are listening to her music as just a way to get entertained. It's just a way to get, their feet moving at a party or whatever, as background music, whatever it is. They're not actually really paying attention to her lyrics. Whatever she's trying to say is not getting through to them, whether it's like political or philosophical or whatever it is. Her music is just being enjoyed as background music, which for an artist, like I think it's Carrie Brownstein, who's the songwriter. Forgive me, I forget. But whoever the songwriter is for this band, they're really annoyed by the fact that apparently nobody actually gives a crap about the lyrics, right? They just care about the sound. And this is the second part that I talked about in the beginning. So personally, this is gonna sound weird considering my channel is all about me breaking down the lyrics and interpreting the lyrics. I actually never cared about the lyrics for any song unless it was like Bob Dylan until I started this channel. Literally, I am a sound guy first. I'm a production quality kind of guy first. I go mainly on the sound of the song. How good is it? How memorable is it? Which is probably why I like a lot of electronic music. But anyway, so the point is, there are people like me who, I take the time to talk about the lyrics for you guys. And even someone like me doesn't really care at the end of the day if you're trying to say something profound, right? I might point it out on my review, but like if I'm just casually listening to your song, I almost never think that deeply about it. So you know what? You just got to be okay with the fact that people are going to enjoy your art however they want to. It's kind of equivalent to like giving somebody money and then being sad that they spent it in a way that you don't like, right? When you give somebody money, you just have to accept the fact that, they're going to do whatever they want with it. Even if they said that, oh, I'm going to spend this on my bills, and then they go out and buy a bunch of beer. You know what? You gave them $100. Just let it go. So I kind of equate this to that. But anyways, so let's move on to track 7 next, which is called Rollercoaster. Yeah, so this song is pretty much about the reality of relationships and about love in the sense that at the beginning, you have no idea what to expect. All you've got going for you is the crush you have on the person. Maybe they're really funny or really beautiful or really smart or charming, whatever it is, right? You don't know anything about them that would annoy you or that would turn you off until you actually start dating them for a while, right? And then it kind of becomes like a boiling frog effect where, for example, in my own relationships, there are definitely things about my exes that really annoyed me, but I didn't really think about it too hard fast enough for it to like make a huge difference. So what I mean by that is it was the boiling frog effect. You know, in the beginning I was so infatuated with them that I kind of ignored all the danger signs. But as the years and months, or as the months and years went by, I started to really isolate things about them that I didn't like, because you kind of normalize the situation, right? You get to a point where you're so used to the other person that the only thing that sticks out to you are the things that really bother you. Like, oh my gosh, they always forget to do the trash, or they always leave their dishes out, or their room is a mess, they've got clothes everywhere, and I have to constantly pick up their clothes and put them away. You know, these are examples of things I went through. So in other words, kind of what she's getting at here a little bit with this song is that, and this is pretty obvious, the best part of any relationship is the beginning, when you're both just naive of each other's imperfections, let's say. But anyway, so that's what the song makes me think of. But let's move on to track number 8, which is called, is it Steep Air? Yeah, this is definitely a dilemma when it comes to relationships. And it sounds like this woman does not feel like waiting for her man to ask her to marry her or to marry him, right? Basically, this woman wants to move things really quickly. She wants to get married young, have kids young, have a family young, so that when she's 80 years old, she has great grandchildren, right? I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But the danger, though, is by not waiting around more than you're comfortable with waiting, then you potentially lose somebody who you really love, or you potentially lose a really great situation, you know. I mean, in my own life, I was definitely very, very, very slow, especially in my last relationship, with asking them to marry me. Obviously, it didn't work out. But the point is, I didn't appreciate what I had fast enough, and I put her in this really kind of shitty situation where she's wondering, like, is this guy ever going to marry me? You know, we've been together for a long time. Like, why the hell is he not asking me to marry him? I don't understand. I don't understand what's going on. So, you know, it's a very real, very human situation. And this poor woman on this song is just meeting all the wrong boyfriends. Her 20s are going by. Maybe her 30s are going by. She's dating all of these people who don't want to commit to her. And she's frustrated. You know, maybe her range of, how would I put it? Maybe, you know, I don't know how long she's dating these people for, but it sounds like she wants them to marry her really, really quickly. Maybe within the span of a year, maybe 2 years. And, you know, these days, that's kind of a long, or rather, these days, that's kind of a short period of time. People like to get to know you for a long time in general, you know, especially when you're in your 20s. It's very common these days for people to focus on their career. You know, they don't want to settle down like that immediately. They don't want to have kids in their 20s because they want to enjoy their 20s. They want to be, you know, at most married to you in their 20s without kids, so that you can do cool things together and not get tied down so immediately. You know, I mean, that kind of thing, though, depends on your ethnicity a lot. Because, for example, a lot of Spanish families in particular like to get married young and have kids young in general. So this poor woman on this song, you know, her mentality is maybe a little bit too old school for her current generation, and she can't find the right guy, and she's just super frustrated. And she's thinking about it, and she's wondering on some level, by doing this, by leaving these men who aren't committing fast enough, is she potentially losing out on an amazing investment, right? Because time is an investment, you could say. So anyways, that's what the song makes me think of, is it makes you ask the hard questions when you're in a relationship. Do I want to invest a lot of time getting to know this person, or do I want things to move fast and potentially marry someone that I'm not ready to marry, right? Because that's another danger. But anyways, so that's what the song makes me think of. But let's move on to the last track on the album, track 10, which is called Nightlight. So I really like the philosophy of this song, even though I don't follow it. I definitely should follow it, but I do like it because at the end of the clip she says, "How do you do it with visions of worse to come, live in the present and spin off the rays of the sun?" So in other words, you've got these people who are probably not in the greatest situation. Like for instance, maybe they have a really low-paying 9-to-5 job that's really hard. And from an objective outside stance, people looking in would be like, man, your life must suck. You don't make a lot of money. You live in this kind of crummy house. You know, you've got kids at a young age, so you can't really do much. Like, how are you happy right now? That doesn't make any sense to me. Well, the way these people deal with it, at least from the perspective of the narrator of the song, is they live in the present. They enjoy the company that's with them at the moment. They think about the now. Let's say they're at a party, at a barbecue or something in their backyard. They're enjoying the barbecue. They're not thinking about their crappy job. They're not thinking about the week ahead that they don't look forward to, obviously. They don't live in the future, and they probably don't also live in the past. That's the problem with a lot of people, myself included, is you're either obsessed with the past and you get sad because of things you regret, or you live in the future and you get depressed by the fact that you've got this awful work week ahead of you, or you do what I do usually, and I've said this many times on my channel, but like one of the things I do that I need to stop doing is I imagine doing something without actually doing it. And by imagining doing it, I just think of all of these negative scenarios that might make me not want to do it in the first place. So that's what these people are not doing. They're just living in the present. And if you live in the present, you can enjoy your life way more because you appreciate the people who are around you, your friends and family. You appreciate the barbecue and the food and the drinks and the laughs and all the stories and things like that. So that's how people like this, who don't have much, get on with their lives, at least according to this narrator, and I kind of agree. But anyways, so that's The Woods, a very intense female-fronted indie rock album. I like it quite a bit. It's definitely a breath of fresh air to have a really good female-fronted indie rock band. There's not many of them, in my opinion. that are really good. But anyways, so hopefully you guys find it interesting. Let me know in the comments, as usual, what you thought about it. And if you enjoyed my take on the album, please leave a like and subscribe. It would really help my channel out. I'd really appreciate it. But yeah, that's Sleater-Kinney, guys. Check them out and have a good one.